So good morning, everyone. So I'm hoping you're not all completely overwhelmed and sitting there thinking, what on earth have I done now? It's really the objective of this morning is really to kind of ease any fears that might be there, any concerns around the course. What I think I've spoken to most of you all individually already because I would have obviously probably made contact with you and spoken, taken you through the content or whatever way you decided that this was the course for you. So, what I'm going to cover, and Declan always gives me 45 minutes to do this, but I find I tend to go through it a lot quicker. I keep it very general because the collections module, he's right in one thing. It is, as he says, where the rubber hits the road. The collections module is really where I feel you'll start to see instantaneous results in terms of doing the course along with your day job, because the focus of collections, obviously, do you ever find that a lot of people can get really focused on your debtors ledger and you look at, let's say you've got 50 debtors and you think, right, I've got 50 calls to make, and you're focusing on your 50 tasks that you've got those 50 calls to make, but we tend to nearly forget about the results of those calls. It's like that you're kind of trying to kind of plow through the work. The collections module will refocus you in terms of dealing with those calls and getting the best results possible out of those calls or out of those emails. Basically, it is the communication module. So the collections module is broken down into four parts, and part one is the part that you're going to receive the notes on Monday. And again, you'll find now I will reiterate a lot of what Declan says just to make sure that it hasn't been missed. All of you should have my email address at this stage. If you don't, I'm going to put it into the chat at the end of the session. It is Katrina at ICMT. If you have not received the short test notes, I've got them set up to go by 12 o'clock. So you should have them at noon on Monday. If you haven't received them, pop me a message on WhatsApp, pop me an email, and I'll make sure that we make sure we have the correct email address for you. So the first part of the collections module on Monday is very much the introductory part. So it's the introductory part to credit. So it's the use of credit. Where do we come across credit? A lot of it is really useful in terms of the credit that we avail of ourselves. So most of us are sitting here now. We've got a credit card or maybe multiple credit cards. We've got a car loan. We've got maybe a mortgage, all of these different types of credit that we avail of. It gives you a really good background and introduction to credit, the use of credit, the negative parts of credit, and really leads us into kind of financial literacy. So it's being able to look after your own financial literacy and make sure that you keep yourself in control of your finances. So from understanding consumer credit and understanding what an important role credit plays in our lives, then we move into the role of credit in business. So most of us here would be dealing with B2B credit. Some of us would be dealing with B2C. That's up to the individual, but we cover both aspects of it in collection. So again, you've chosen the right course. We cover everything in this sense. So you need to have a really strong understanding of the role of credit in business. Another part of it then that it segues into is reminding yourself of the importance of our customers. So like without customers, we're not going to have jobs. That's the bottom line. So making sure that we understand the role of credit in the business and how that impacts the business that we work in and how that then rolls down to impacting the customers and the importance of your customers. This whole section is focused on giving you that really, really fresh perspective on what the role of credit is in your own life, in your customer's life, and then how important is it to your business. So once you've kind of covered that foundational stuff, then we move into credit terms and credit limits. So I'm not sure out of the 20 people that we have on this morning, I'm not sure how many of you would actually be involved in the setting of limits and the setting of credit terms. Most of you will have, at the very least, you'll have um, input into each customer. If you don't set them, 100% yourself, you will have input into it. And let's not be jaded about it. You get a customer, they get certain credit terms and credit limits. Those limits and terms could change due to the customer's behavior as we go forward. So it's really having a really, you need a strong foundational understanding of what credit terms are, what credit limits are, and how those are going to impact your customer, and how you're going to set those or amend those as the case may be. Um, a lot of it then is when you've got your sales terms and your sorry, your credit terms and your credit limits set for your customers. It is really a case of monitoring their behavior within those terms and within those limits, and making sure that you are, as a good credit controller, you are putting the business first. You know, you put the customer first, but ultimately it's the business that has the biggest impact, so you're putting the business first. Um, because you're then talking about, we'll say, credit terms, credit limits, it makes sense in this particular part then to talk about dealing with other departments. So while we all have, we'll say, input into terms and limits and, you know, how you're going to collect from certain customers, there are other departments involved as well. I think, you know, we've all been down the road of dealing with sales departments, and, you know, say that I can see certain people having a little smile at that. You know, even traditionally down through the years, I would have been involved as a salesperson. And the sales teams in every company, my God, we were the superstars. You know, sales have smashed their targets, and they've, you know, they've overachieved on their targets this quarter. And then the poor credit teams that are left to deal with the mess and actually bring in those amounts, that is simply a fact of life. It is a fact of life. That is the way it worked. It's only now, I would say, in the last 20 years, have companies started to realize the actual value and the actual importance of where the credit department fits in with the sales department. Because we all know a sale is not a sale until that money is in the bank account. And that's just a fact. Um, so you'll have to excuse me. I've come down with a head cold this morning, so I'm there with my tissue all the time. So please excuse me. Um, so dealing with the sales department is always going to be challenging. And it's dealing with that department and dealing with customer service, dealing with logistics. You've got a specific task, which is collecting the money, but there may be many other departments that will be acting as obstacles sometimes to doing that. And we need to be able to deal with those departments in a professional way and make sure that ultimately we get that money in. So it is really a case of, let's look at credit, let's look at how important it is. Let's look at how it impacts our business. Let's look at how it impacts our customers. And then let's look at the other factors within the business that we have to consider before we can kind of motor on and be good credit controllers. And that's what that whole section is about. It is a really, really interesting section because it will make you examine how you deal with those other departments. It will make you examine how you deal with your customers. And it's thought provoking, you know, in terms of making sure that you're getting the best out of every interaction, not only with your customers, but also with your colleagues as well. And that it's all ultimately going towards the end goal, which is making sure that the money is paid. So dealing with those other departments, super important. And that's what part one is about. This is the part that you will receive on Monday morning or on Monday afternoon at 12 o'clock. I will ensure that everybody gets that section, and you will get short test one. Now, the short tests, I'm probably going to give you a bit of a hint now that I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's, as I see my job as a tutor, not to be testing you. I see my job as a tutor to teach, to educate, to help, and to bring you through this course. I think that's really what we as tutors want to do. We don't want to see you suffer. We don't want to see you struggling. We want to see you fly through this course, and we want to see you enjoy it as well. So the short tests. You'll get a short test every week. So I send out 4 parts to the collections module. So therefore, there's going to be 4 short tests. And the little hint that I'm going to give you is make sure that you keep a record of your short tests. And make sure that when I come back and say, have a look at question number 7, have a look at question number 10 because you got them wrong, make sure that you have those questions with you and in your brain around exam time because the exam is broken down into two halves. One half is multiple choice questions, and we don't try to reinvent the wheel. A lot of those questions have come up on your short tests. So just to give you that little bit of a hint that I don't believe in trying to test people to catch them out. It's not the exam for me is to enable you to demonstrate how much you've learned, not the other way around. So that's one way, just to give you a little bit of a hint, your short tests are super important and they do carry marks as well. So, just keep that at the back of your mind. There's 10% there for the taking. If you want to do well and you want to, maybe get that distinction, then keep that at the back of your mind. Okay. Has anybody got any questions so far on anything that I've covered?
Yeah, Katrina, hi. Just hiya.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hiya. Yeah, just with regard to that, so you're saying that when you send out the exam or the questions, the short questions, and we answer them or whatever, and you come back and you say, look out for question 4 and 7.
Yeah.
Um, with regard then to you marking the grade on that, so have you marked the grade um prior to the sending back out the question that you got wrong, or are you kind of giving a chance to say, okay, you can get a better grade
No,
because,
no. So there's 10% for, I think it's 10% for the four
yeah,
short tests. So it's 2.5% per short test. If you send it back and you've got 8 out of 10, you've got 8 out of 10. Okay,
right,
that's
but
your grade.
you'll still come
But
back and
but
say, look at them,
exactly,
right?
exactly. It's not a case that I tell you, okay, you've got 8 out of 10, Anita, tough luck.
Yeah,
I'm going to point out where you went wrong because we have to be learning.
fair
And
enough. Yeah,
that what 2 out of the 2.5% would be your grade. But I suppose the reason that I bring that up is because a lot of people think they get so stressed out coming towards the exam and they think that they need to memorize each module one by one. If you have a look and you can see the pattern of the short questions through the modules, there's a pattern there. And if you use your kind of common sense in terms of what I keep talking about, we're results focused. So if you look at the short tests, what I'm saying is we're not going to reinvent the wheel and try and trip you up in the main exam. All right.
okay, yeah, thank you.
Cool. Great. So module, or I'm going to call it module 2. So the module is split into 4. So part 2. Part 2 is the part, it's actually my favorite part, okay? Because I think to put it into layman's terms, the section of part 2 is really designed to enable you to deal with the person in front of you. Okay. So how would we deal with the person in front of you to get a result? So whether you be a salesperson or whether you be a credit controller, you've got an ultimate goal to get a result out of that person. Right. So if I'm ringing to make a collection of €1,000, the ultimate result that I want out of that customer is that they pay me the €1,000. So that's plain and simple. So because we're not dealing with a machine. So if I go to my cash machine, my bank link, I put my card in, I enter my number, it gives me €1,000 if the €1,000 is there. It's not going to argue back. It's not going to say, oh, well, can I pay you 500 today, Katrina, and come back to me tomorrow for the other 500? It's a machine. Unfortunately, customers are people. People are hugely complex creatures, and we are at the mercy of people, their personalities, their lives, their emotions, their logic, their past experiences, their past traumas, and add all of that together and then just add in what kind of a day they're having on top of that. That's what you have to deal with as a credit controller trying to be paid. Doesn't that sound really dramatic? Like if you think about all of those things on every call that you're making to be paid, it's really dramatic. But it's true. We have to deal with a person who is completely and utterly different from ourselves. So, the trick to being a fabulous, skilled credit controller, I think, is adapting ourselves to the person in front of you to get that same result without compromising on anything. Now, the theory around this really starts to segue into, like negotiation skills and, it's kind of, is it plamossing? Is it convincing somebody? Is it making, a lot of salespeople use this type of theory as well. But, let's call a spade a spade. As a credit controller, we can't let our own emotions rule us. If we are peed off because the dog had an accident in the room, the kids wouldn't get up for school, I'm running an hour late, I missed a meeting, the boss is annoyed with me. If you let that emotion get involved with your collection calls, who's going to be on the back foot? You are. And the customer straight away is going to sense it. So, what module two, a very long winded way of telling you, but what module two is about? It's about dealing with people, it's about getting to know over the phone and even in person people's processing styles. So you need to know, what kind of person am I dealing with? Am I dealing with somebody? And I'll give you an example of this. Am I dealing with an auditory person? Does this person want to talk to me? How do they hear what I'm saying? Am I dealing with a digital person? Is this a person who does not want to talk to me at all? Do they just want to receive an email? We all have customers like that who have no interest in being on the phone with you. All they want is the email with the amount that's due, how much do I need to pay, and when do I need to pay it by. But can you see what I'm talking about? There is a skill in getting to know these different types of customer and then adjusting your behavior to enable you to get the best result. That's what part two is about. You're going to deal with all of these different types of personalities, and you're going to learn, how do I adapt to that person? And when I say in front of me, I don't always mean physically. I mean that person on the phone, that person at the end of the email, that person I'm sending a letter to, in order to get the best result out of this interaction. And that's the objective of the entire module, is to get the best out of every interaction you have, the best result, whether it's get paid the most, get paid the soonest, and get paid on time as quickly as possible with as little hassle as possible. That's the best result for any credit controller. So dealing with the person in front of you, dealing with their personality types, adapting oneself to that. So there's a lot of cool stuff in this module. There's a lot of personality tests, there's listening tests. It's all very cool stuff that you can kind of delve in and out of. And I've had students in the past that have absolutely run away with this. Because it's so interesting. I've even tried some of these listening tests on my own children, and it's amazing. Like, children by nature, people don't want to do what they're told. So if my chap is standing on the kitchen table at home and I say, get off the kitchen table, he will not move. He will stay on that kitchen table. But if I adapt to him and say, oh my God, you're looking like you're having so much fun. Can you come down on the chair and see if it's as much fun? Straight away, off the table. So it's about adapting to the personality in front of you to get the best result for you. Um, the next part of it then is really dealing with circumstances. And then it strays then into, we've been talking about collections now, like it's all tickety boo and people pay on time. What happens if they don't pay? So that's where the challenges start to come in. What happens if they can't pay, they won't pay, or they shouldn't pay? So there's three major instances where we don't receive payment. And it's up to you as a good credit controller to look at those instances and decide whether it's a case of that they can't. So what are the circumstances surrounding that customer that they cannot physically, they don't have it, that they won't, which is a totally other scenario. Why won't they pay? Or that they shouldn't. So at that case, we need to look within ourselves. We need to look within our own businesses to see, have you enabled that customer enough to make that payment? Um, if there's an invoice wrong, if there's a statement wrong, if an order went out wrong, if an order was late, should they pay? So it's really about making sure that we tick all of our own internal boxes first, and then we enable that customer in every way to make that payment to you. So they can't pay, won't pay, shouldn't pay. We then go into negotiation skills. So that's a big part of section two. And I would say, in a nutshell, Section two is about understanding yourself, understanding your own mood and how your own mood can impact your results. But really, it's about understanding your customer, understanding what your objective is on that interaction. So when you send an email, and we don't do this, I don't do this. Every email that you send, you should actually stop before you send it and say, well, what is my objective of sending this email? What result do I want out of this? Um, so if you're in collections, when you're sending an email, you should be very clear, excuse me, you should be very clear on what result you are looking to get from that customer, whether it's payment, whether it's a specific payment, is it a back payment, is it interaction? Sometimes customers just won't answer us. So be very clear on what your objective is and then applying yourself to that particular scenario and to that particular customer. And all of that theory together, it might sound like a huge mishmash, but it's fantastic. It gives you insight into your customers that you would have never had before because you've never thought about it. And it's really, like I said, very thought provoking. But ultimately, it'll help you determine what you want your results to be, and it will help you get those results. So that's part two. And I'll stop again to blow my nose first and to let anybody else ask a question if they want. I'm so sorry. I'm really suffering with this morning. Okay, as Declan says, we take silence as happiness. So that's section two. So section three then, section three, I need to have my notes in front of me here. So section three is, bear with me a second now, where did I have it? Sorry, ladies and gents, I had it open there this morning. I just want to make sure that I'm not mixing you guys up. Module one, module two. Okay, so section three, and I might have actually jumbled these up to be honest about it, but it's not going to make much difference anyway because it all feeds back into the collection side of things. So what I've just covered in terms of the personality side of things, that's actually module three. So module two, there's a segue between the two of them. Module two is about our methods of communication. So it feeds very well into module three. There is a pattern, there is a kind of a direction that you follow. So section two really concentrates on our methods of communication. Now, you'd be so surprised the number of credit controllers that I talk to, particularly when they're considering the course, the number of times that I've heard, well, I'm doing this 20 years. Or I've got 10 years experience. If I've got 15 years experience, I've worked in credit control all my life. And how many of those people come onto the course and they had no idea that you should put so much thought into an email or a letter or a phone call. Again, they've gotten so jaded, I think, a lot of the time with the job that you don't tend to think about you're not results driven anymore. You're actually productivity driven, if that makes sense. I refer back to what I said at the beginning of the session, and I've seen it in my own staff. I've seen it in myself. Just sometimes you want to get the day over and done with. I've got 50 customers to contact today. Once I get those 50 customers contacted, I'm going home. And that's real. It's productivity driven and it's not results driven. When you flip that on its back and you say, right, I've got 50 I don't have 50 calls to make here. I've got 50 payments to get here. It's it's putting the focus on something that really is completely different. And you start to think a little bit more about how you're going to do that. So while we've already discussed personalities and stuff, let's assume we all know that already. We know what kind of personality we're going to be approaching. So now we need to adjust our communication method to suit that personality. So if we go back to what I said about some people do not want to be on the phone. They just don't. They are not good talkers. They don't want to talk to you about your children. They don't want to talk to you about the weather. Then there's other people that will chit chat for 40 minutes about nothing. And you have to do that because that's part of the process. That's what they like to do. They like to chit chat. They like to make friends. They like to get to know you. So it's really being able to spot the type of person that you're dealing with, but then you adjust your communication method depending on that person. So what we're going to do in part two, not part three, in part two is we're going to break down how a phone call works. And like you're probably all thinking, oh geez, lads, I mean, what have I done now? This course, you're going to be teaching me to suck eggs. This goes in in a very theoretical way. It goes into how a phone call should work for you based on the result that you want. So it's going to again dip into negotiating skills. It's going to dip into how you phrase things. It's going to dip into what words are you using. When Declan was on here this morning, Declan's one of his favorite things is using good words and bad words. Did he talk about credit limits and credit facility? Or he may not have. So if you talk to somebody about their credit limit, limit already has a really kind of negative connotation to it. Okay. But if you talk to somebody about their credit facility, it's a totally different, it's a totally different way of putting it. So if you're talking to a customer where you're under pressure to get that payment and you actually say, well, look, I'm trying to enable you here. I'm trying to protect your credit facility. You're not trying to limit their credit limit. You're trying to protect their credit facility. Do you notice how the two ways of saying the same thing have two totally different connotations? And it's really surprising if you train yourself, and this is self-training. If you train yourself day in, day out to concentrate on replacing these different words, and there's loads of them in this module, and you start to become aware of it, you will be shocked at how your results start to look differently. So part two, it's all about communication. It's about the words that we use. It's about how we phrase things. Again, we have to remind ourselves at the beginning of every call, particularly if it's an important call, you take those 30 seconds to sit back and go, okay, what do I want out of this call? And how am I going to steer this call towards my end goal? That's what collections is about. So, part one, credit facility. How important is it in the business? And how important are you to the business? Part two, how do I do a call? How do I do a proper call, a well structured call? How do I amend my language to get better results than what I'm looking for? And how do I adapt to the person in front of me? How do I get the most out of them? Section three, all about the personalities. It's all about how am I going to deal with, I'm going to choose a name, Anita over Eleanor. Bianca and Alexandra are two different people. I guarantee they have different manners on the phone. How am I going to adapt myself in order to get good results from both Alexandra and from Bianca? Does that make sense? The whole thing, can you see how the pattern works and how the structure of the collections module is starting to come together? So it's all about that day-to-day job. I'll give you another hint now in terms of your final exam for collections. So we've already covered short tests and how important they are. In the assignments, okay, so you get two assignments, and we don't tend to change the assignments because they're too important. The assignments are very, very focused on communication. Okay, so it's your day-to-day communication. What I would suggest to you when Roberto asked the question this morning in terms of the exams, what is the exam about? Is it a test of the theory? It's not a test of the theory, but it is. It's a test of how you use the theory to get better results. If you keep that in the back of your mind as you're going through the course, but keep it in the back of your mind when you're doing the day job. So, excuse the language, but if you have a pissed off email from a customer that you had to resolve, that could stand to be one of the best examples that you have for an assignment or for the final exam. Same with a phone call. I'm not looking for customer details, lads. Nothing like that. This is theoretical, okay? But being able to bring the theory to life and apply it to a real life example, that's where I will look at Eileen's test paper and say, she gets it. There's an A for that, because you're taking the theory and you're saying, Katrina, I understood that because this customer ate the face off me the other day because A, B, C, and D went wrong. So this customer is very much doesn't like to be on the phone, likes an email. So this is the email that I sent. It was well structured, straight to the point, and this is the result that we got. That's where a student has taken the collections module and they have run with it. So put it into practice. It's not all about theory. I did say to every single one of you on the phone that I was speaking to, I said, this is a practically driven course. We want people saying, geez, I never tried that tactic that you talked about, but I did the other day and it worked. So there's no point in doing a course just to have letters after your name. You want to see instant results, don't you? You want to see that you're improving and you're getting better. So that's a hint for the final exam. If you can, and I don't wish you to have bad interactions, don't get me wrong, but if you have examples, or good interactions, just as good. If you have a really fantastic where you get off the phone and you go, damn, I'm good. Like everybody has a moment like that where it was really difficult, really challenging. Maybe you went in with that problem solving attitude and you got what you needed, you got what you wanted, and you hang up the phone, you go, oh, that's why I do it. If you have examples like that, when I say document it, just note it down in the back of a journal that you can use in the exam and you can use in your assignments. That will get you top marks. Okay? Great. And now I'm going to cover very quickly what the fourth part is. The fourth part is what? So the fourth part is very much kind of dealing with the end of the collections day, I suppose. It's looking at your results, it's looking at emotion, logic, power, making sure that you've approached everything in the correct way. It's making sure that you've gotten the best results out of all of your interactions that you possibly can. And then it goes into the side of things that we would hope you don't have to too often. So, third party agencies, there are certain instances where we have just tried everything, and for one reason or another, it, it hasn't come to the end that you wanted. So you need to go and move it on. You need to escalate. You need to go further. That's what module 4 is about. Although we would hope if you if you put into practice all of this theory, and not all of it, maybe there's parts of it that you won't be interested in, and there's going to be other parts that you think are fantastic. You're an individual yourself, but if you try and take that theory and really try and put it into practice, and like I remember sitting listening to Declan years ago, and he said something about this was only a small example that I tried to train myself on, and it does work. When somebody said, like Irish people, my God, we can be so miserable when we want to be. Like, how are you? Oh, not too bad. How many times do people say, not too bad? And like actually training yourself to say, I'm great. How are you? It actually not only puts a pep in that conversation, but it puts a pep in you as well. Um, I'm not going to go too hippy dippy with this now and try and teach you all to kind of dance shamanic dances or anything, but just little changes to your language and little changes to how you are on a day-to-day basis. They can have such amazing results in your day-to-day work, and that's really what we try and do in collections. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. I'm really passionate about getting people better at what they're doing, getting better results, but ultimately being better yourselves and having a better job, having a better sense of what you do yourself. So you will find this module really interesting, I hope, really practical. If you can divide the theory and the practical stuff, try and put into practice what I tell you to put into practice. Give it a shot, see what results you get, and hopefully then at the end of it, you will see it as one of the better modules, in the sense that one of the really, really practically driven modules where you're like, damn, I can do this from day one, it's a good module. So that's it for the 4 modules. That's what we're going to cover. I'm going to set up the emails actually to go now today. So I've got all your email addresses. You should get your notes by 12 o'clock on the Monday that they're due, along with the short test. I'm going to reiterate one more time what Declan said, and I've said this to you guys on the phone when I've been speaking to you. I'm a human being. I've got children myself. They've got hand, foot, and mouth at the moment. Not a nice thing, but that's what we're dealing with at home at the moment. Life gets in the way. If you need a few more days, if you need extra help, if you need anything, send me a WhatsApp and I will help you in every way I possibly can. My job is not to test you, not to push you. It is to get you through this course. with, within reason. You guys have to work, but my job is to get you through it. It's not in our interest to have anybody failing, and I won't have anybody fail collections. That's the day-to-day job. So this one should be a breeze. Nobody should be worried about it. It should be like, okay, I'm dying to get the next set of notes because I'm dying to see what happens next. That's kind of the way this module should work. So that is everything from my end. I'm going to open the floor to questions now, and you feel free to shoot any questions that you have. I'll also put my mobile number into the chat there, and you guys can add me on WhatsApp. Like I said, sometimes even a WhatsApp is a quicker way to get me than an email. And like I said, feel free anything at all that you need help with. You just pop a message to me and I'll be back to you. So, any questions on anything that I've covered just there now? Or is everybody dying for a cup of coffee at this stage?
I've one question. I'm a very questiony person.
Go,
Um,
I love it. Go ahead.
yeah, I suppose as a manager,
Yeah,
okay, and you're dealing with you're dealing with other debt collectors or
yeah.
collection agents, whatever wording you want to use it. Um, is there any part of the module that helps you kind of deal with their different um ways of doing things? Like you're talking there about
Mhm.
personalities and trying to ascertain what type of person you're
Yeah,
dealing with at that time. So, like, if
yeah.
you've got somebody on your team that isn't able to do that,
Yeah. So
how do you
what I would say
get them
is
to do
the
that?
yeah. So you look at look at what you need, okay, and
Yeah,
look at who you're going to deal with to get that need fulfilled. So whether it's a collections call to a customer, you need to know who the customer is and how are you going to position that with the customer to get the best result. It's the very same with your team. You're going to have the guy that's over in the corner that wants to be left alone and again only likes to be told things through email. You're going to have the superstar who wants recognition for everything. You're going to have you're going to have the people who want to sit and talk analytically about every single customer and go through the nitty gritty details. It's all down to you, Anita, because again, not to sound hippy dippy, we're the masters of our own destiny. So we have to think what we want out of that interaction and how are we going to position ourselves to get that person to work with us. So I would apply that the knowledge is the same. It doesn't matter who you're dealing with. It's looking at each interaction and looking at how am I going to get the best out of that interaction. And if a result for you is that getting somebody else to complete something, that's the result that you want. So you apply it that way. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it can be applied in any scenario whatsoever. It can be applied in life. It can be applied in work, but it's particularly useful, as I said, for collecting from people because at the end of the day, that's where we're picking up the phone and we're looking for something. And we're always looking for things as managers. I've got 4 people working for me now, and they are all so different. I have to, like, I can't get them to adapt to me. I have to adapt to them. And that's a sign of a good manager. And it's a sign of a
Okay.
good collector. And it will make sense. But that's what I would think. I would think of, okay, well, what do I want Bernie, to do for me today? Well, I want her to make those 20 calls and she can be wicked slow at times and she's so easily distracted.
Yeah.
It's really kind of, well, what is the outcome that I want? And how am I going to approach Bernie being the type of person that she is in order to get that outcome? That's where that theory will really help.
Okay. And is that covered in any part of the module? Is that side of it with managers and
No,
uh
we don't specifically talk about managers as such. We always talk about it because it's the collections module. You're always talking about it from the perspective of collecting money. But I do believe some of this is touched upon in credit management. Is that right, Declan? Or you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of a distinction, and you're absolutely right, Katrina. When we talk about the collections module and communications within collections, that learning can be applied to everything. Specifically, management though is dealt with on the advanced diploma, which is the follow-on course. So the diploma is geared towards, you know doing the job of credit incredibly well and increasing your productivity and all that kind of good stuff. The advanced diploma deals with the management of credit and
Okay.
managing people and getting the best out of people. So part of the content you can take and apply to the management structure, specifically management. I say we deal with that separately on the advanced diploma, but
Okay.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And look, if there is that in specific, talk to us. And as I said, we're definitely here to help. So that is that.
Is that everybody then, or is there any more questions? Or are you guys kind of comfortable now with collections? There's going to be no surprises. And like I said, contact me if there's any questions. Contact me if there's anything.
Yeah. And even contact us if there's something that we don't send you. So, back to my sadness, I have a laptop full of spreadsheets that Katrina gives out to me about all the time. And why I don't get upset is because I know she's right. So if there is stuff, if you want to calculate DSOs or you want to work out your percentage collections or whatever, I probably have them sitting here on my laptop. So even if it's not in the course, if it's something that you'd like to have, contact us and we'd be delighted to have it as well. So yeah, we got within 2 minutes of the 11:30. So well done everybody. We are right on track. I also see Paul has joined us. Paul, you're very
Hey
welcome.
everybody, thanks
You're-
Declan. How are you?
Great, you're just in time for the tea break.
Good. The way I like to live my life.
Perfect timing, which is great. So, guys, what we'll do now is we go grab a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or whatever. And if you're back at 11:45, Paul, you're going to start. Just let me see, get it right. You are starting with the
International, I think it
the
is.
international
Yep.
credit. So half an hour in international from 11:45 to 12:15. So if you made up your mind to do law, log off the meeting and come back at 12:15. I'll let you back in. And if you want to see both, stay for both and make up your mind afterwards. So see you 11:45
Bye,
international
guys.
credit management. See you, Katrina. Have a great weekend.
See you.
and
Chat
mind
to you all
yourself.
Monday.
And mind those
Take
kids
care.
of yours. Yeah.
Thanks,
I know.
Katrina.
Take
Thanks a
care.
million, guys.
Thank
Speak to you
you.
Monday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.